So today we are going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is habit formation. This presentation, this information is all based on the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. If you have not read this book, I highly encourage you to read it. It is a phenomenal book, and it's pretty simple, straightforward, easy to read. But anyways, I've probably read it like 4 or 5 times. I absolutely love this book. So Atomic Habits, where he came up with this name is atomic is tiny, right? We think of like atomic particles. They're itty bitty tiny things. And then habit is something we do over and over again. So atomic habits are these tiny, minuscule habits that you probably don't even think about, but they add up and they can make huge impacts in your life and in your day-to-day routine. So we're going to talk about how to create really strong atomic habits so that we can stay consistent with reaching our goals. We want to make sure that we're focusing on systems, not just outcomes. So think about this in terms of weight loss. You might want to lose 20 pounds, but if all you focus on is the fact that you want to lose 20 pounds, where's the process? What are we going to do from wanting to being 20 pounds less, right? So that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to talk about systems and those little habits that can lead us to our goals. So the best thing that we can do is create our new system, create our process. And if you've done many appointments with us and we've kind of done some goal setting, we try to be as specific as possible. And this is called a SMART goal. And that's an acronym: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timed. So if you're not quite doing well with your fluid intake, we might decide, I need to increase my fluid intake. Cool, great. Now we're going to talk about how are we going to do that and how are we going to measure that. So if you only drink 24 ounces of fluid a day and we want to get you to 64 ounces a day, what are we going to do? If you've ever had this conversation with me, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Timed intake goals. This is the big thing we want to do. So we're going to get specific is the first thing we're going to do. If we need to increase our fluid intake by 40 ounces, that's how much is from 24 to 64. We've got 40 ounces that we need to increase. So specific. How are we going to make that happen? We are going to buy a new cup. All right. So that's our first step in our process. Hence the 40-ounce container next to me, right? So we're going to buy a new cup. So that's getting specific. What are we going to do? We're going to buy a new cup. Measurable. We need to drink 40 more ounces throughout the day. How is this going to be attainable? Well, we're going to split that up. We're going to set goals throughout the day. By 10 a.m., I want you to have drank maybe a quarter of that. Okay, so that would be about 10 ounces. By 1 p.m., let's say another. So you're down to half of your 40 ounces. You've got a 20 ounces increase. And then again, we're going to continue to set that timeline until you've got a full 40 ounces in addition. So that's going to make it attainable. We're breaking that down into little pieces. Why is this relevant? Because you need to be hydrated. This is an essential piece of long-term success. And then timed. Usually we do our appointments monthly. So our timeline is by next month. And you can see how we've taken this simple thing of increased fluids and we've broken that down into very specific steps. And what happens when we outline those specific steps, we're actually able to watch ourselves consistently meet those minuscule goals, and it leads to the outcome we want. Consistency and building those tiny habits makes the difference between long-term success and needing to start over. All right. So this is kind of in the same mindset of that. This says achieving the goal only changes your life for the moment, right? If you reach 40 ounces, you drink more fluid today. You can't just be like, well, I did it. I increased my fluid. All is done. I met my goal. Ready to go. But tomorrow, you don't reach your fluid goal because you didn't change your system. You didn't change your process. So by setting those SMART goals, breaking them down into those bite-sized little tiny pieces, you're actually changing and working on creating a new system, which is where habits begin to be formed. And then you're meeting your fluid goal every single day and you're not dehydrated and you feel great. So those are the kind of the way you can look at that from a broader point. All right. Goals can work against us. And this can happen when we get these big goals in our mind. Anything, I can want to run a marathon. I don't, but I could want to run a marathon. And if that's my goal, that might be very overwhelming if I haven't jogged in the last 15 years. That goal may feel really, really overwhelming, and that kind of paralyzes me. Have you ever experienced that, where you have this big, huge goal and then you're like completely paralyzed? Maybe it's painting your kitchen. You want to paint your kitchen, but that feels like a lot. So you just put it off for years and years, right? I think we've all probably seen that happen. But you can slowly start to create these system changes, these little steps along the way. And what happens is you kind of change your identity. And this is one of the biggest things that is very difficult for health-focused changes, or running, for instance. You can want to run a marathon, but if you don't see yourself as a runner, are you going to do that? Are you going to ever reach that goal? Probably not. So true behavior change, true habit change looks like an identity change. You have to begin to view yourself as what you want to become. So to take it back even as, the fluid intake mindset, if you're dehydrated and you want to be hydrated, just wanting to be hydrated isn't going to get you there. So you've got to start thinking, I'm somebody who carries my water bottle with me all the time. I am somebody who loves element packets and I add that to my water every morning. That is who I am. You start telling yourself that, you start creating this nonverbal identity change in your own mental space, and that's where stuff starts to happen. Things really do begin to happen when we change that. Okay, so let's focus now on outcome-based versus identity-based habits and thought processes. This is very interesting. You can see this little circle here with the little circles inside of it. The outermost circle that's blue, this is your outcome. This is what you want to happen. The green is the process, and the yellow is your identity. So let's talk through kind of how this all makes sense when it comes to changing your habits. And it goes back to what we really just talked about. Your outcomes are impacted by your process, and your consistency with your process is impacted by your identity. In the book, he shares the example of a smoker or somebody who smokes or has smoked in the past. So you offer somebody who has smoked in the past a cigarette, and they can answer one of two ways. They can say, no, thank you, I don't smoke, or I'm trying to quit. Which of those two ways identifies them as a non-smoker? The first one, no thanks, I don't smoke. I am a non-smoker. That's my identity now. Even if I used to smoke, no thanks, I don't smoke. But if you say, I'm trying to cut back, you're still identifying yourself as a smoker. So changing that mindset, even though that sounds so silly, not a big deal, it is huge. There is a very, very strong link between who we identify as and what our actions are. So that's kind of a big thing that we like to talk about. All right, so let's talk a little bit about habits and what they actually are. Habits are made up of 4 pieces. There's a cue, a craving, a response, and a reward. This is for any habit ever known to mankind. They have these 4 pieces, all right? So many people are jumping in, which is great. So the cue is the desire for the reward, okay? It's a long day. You come home, you want to relax. That's your cue. It's the longing for the reward. The reward is relaxing. The response is how we go about obtaining that. And that's what we want to kind of dig into a little bit. So the reward kind of serves as 2 purposes, like it's mentioned here, to satisfy us and to teach us that the action is worth remembering in the future. So let's say bad habits that we all tend to lean into, like snacking at night. I want to relax. I go to the kitchen. My response is to get a snack. I go sit down. I have a snack. I am able to kind of like breathe. Is the act of chewing what's actually giving you the ability to like relax? No, but you associate having the snack with relaxing. So your body's like, oh, that was worth it. That was great. That's how a habit kind of starts to work its way in. And we can do that with unhealthy behaviors and healthy behaviors. So we're going to talk about that as well. So the habit loop looks just like this. You have your cue, you have your craving, which leads to a response, which gives us a reward, and then eventually we come back to the cue. This is really broken into kind of 2 stages. We have the problem and we have the solution. So the problem is the cue and the craving, right? That's the mental side of things, the cue and the craving. And then we have the response, which is your action, and we have the reward. So these 2 things are separated out, and we can take that piece, the fact that they're separated, and use that to our benefit. So we want to think about breaking that. Let me back up and look back at this thing here. Okay. So the response is really where we can make a change, right? The response is that action that you're taking. So we have a cue, we have a craving, and then there's a natural break in that cycle where we have a decision how we respond. So this is what we want to work on, is our response. Do we get this snack? Is that what we want to do? Or do we decide that sitting down with the book is going to help us take a deep breath and relax in the afternoons and the evenings? We get to decide this response. And hopefully through our appointments monthly, we're helping you guys find this change in response. That's what we want to do. But even on your own, take a look at some of your habits, write these down. We all know what they are. It just takes time to like sit down and think through it. Here's our reward that we're looking for. What do I do to get to that reward? Well, I do this. Is that a helping habit or a not helping habit? If it's not helping you reach your goals, then let's work on the response. Let's work on that. Let's make some changes. And this is where you're going to see change happen in your outcomes, right? Now, when you're trying to create a new response, you want to make it as easy as possible, all right? Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. So when you look at creating or try to choose a new response, a new action that you're going to do, you want to kind of take charge of what the next new response is. If snacking in the evening has been your go-to for the last 20 years, you are not magically going to go to your bookshelf and thumb through and find a book and sit down and read a book. It's not going to happen that way. That takes a lot of effort in the moment. We don't have time for that. So we want to make things as obvious, as easy, as simple, as satisfying as possible. So we want to then talks about creating an environment. Most of the time, our cue comes from our environment. And if that environment is being created for us, we don't really feel like we have a lot of say in that. We don't feel like we have a lot of power to create or change our environment, and we may not. So the cue isn't where we need to focus our effort, right? The cue is going to happen. It might be walking through your door in the afternoon when you get off work. I can't change that. I have to come home. I've got to get to my family, so I have to walk through that door. That cue doesn't change. But we can move through that and kind of think about, okay, so that's my cue. My craving is relaxation. I want to take a deep breath. I'm using my own life as an example here because, we like to have peace in the afternoons. With 4 kids, that's not always the way it works, but, and so then we look at our response that we are having. Is it to, get the snack or read a book? But we're going to stick with that because that's going to help us all the way throughout. So we look at our current habit. It's put my stuff down, hug my kids, say hello, get everybody back together again. We celebrate getting back together in the evenings. And then current habit, I head to the kitchen to get a snack. All right. So when we're going to start making a change, I no longer want to get that snack. I want to read the book instead. The first thing, the easiest thing, is to create a new habit stack. This is the coolest thing ever. So if this is the only thing you hear in this class, take it this. Habit stacking is amazing. After current habit, I will habit you need. All right. After habit I need, I will habit I want. So this is very simple, very easy way to kind of outline things. And you can change this verbiage around a little bit. So for instance, if I want to come home and relax, but I don't want a snack, I want to read a book, I'm going to say, after I come home, after I walk through the door and hug my family, which is my current habit, I will reach for my book. All right. After I reach for my book, I will sit down in my favorite chair and read 1 chapter. So you see how we take what we're already doing, we take what we need to implement, and then we give ourselves what we're wanting, right? I want to relax. So getting in my favorite chair with a blanket, I might even light a candle. It is fall. We might need pumpkin scents around us to make us feel relaxed, but we're going to take that and add in the little things that we need to do. If you have ever started taking a new medication, how did you make sure you remembered that medication? A lot of times people will put it next to their toothbrush. You brush your teeth, you take your medicine, right? So that's habit stacking. You might be doing it and you don't even realize it. It's dinner time, you're getting everybody plated up, you automatically reach for a glass and get water and take it to the table. That's habit stacking. You plated your meal, you got your glass of water. So you're already doing this. And when you take some time to actually realize it, it can be so powerful. Habit stacking is a very, very exciting thing to pay attention to. And here you can see I put the little example. After I get off the phone, I will take a drink of water. After I finish my water, I will have a cup of coffee. If you know me, I'm a coffee snob. I love my coffee, but I don't always drink my water, which is why I use that as an example all the time. So after I get off a call with you guys, after I get off of my appointments, I have my water right here. And when I finish my water, then I get to have an afternoon cup of coffee. That's just kind of my routine. Does it always work? No, we're not perfect. We're not always going to make it through that perfectly the way we want it to, but we're working on it, right? We're creating that process. All right, so make it attractive. Dopamine is your pleasure hormone. So habits are dopamine driven. When we have the cue, we have the craving, we have the response, that reward part of the cycle is dopamine hit. That's where we get our pleasure from, is whatever kind of dopamine hit. That is why if I want to relax, I'm not going to start folding laundry unless that relaxes you, which in all means come to my house and fold my laundry. But I'm not going to say, nope, instead of having a snack and sitting down, I'm actually going to do more work. that's not going to give you that same reward, that same dopamine hit. So when you're choosing a new action, you have to make sure that it's going to give you that full reward that you're actually looking for, or that action will never work out. It will never stick. If you've ever started like a workout routine and you despise working out and all you say is like, I'm going to lift weights for 20 minutes, and you go and you start doing that, but you hate it, it's not going to stick. You've got to find something that you like. Try new things. You might love Pilates. You might love taking a walk around your neighborhood. If you love it, it's giving you that reward. It's giving you that dopamine hit. You are much more likely to stick with that new habit, that new action. All right. Let's see. This slide talks about attractiveness. I'm a visual person, so if things look pretty, I'm more likely to want to be around them. So for instance, I'm a cup person, very, very much so a cup person. I have lots of cups, and they're very important to me because if I have to drink out of an ugly cup, I'm probably not going to drink out of it. And that is so dumb, and that is so frivolous. I get it, but it's powerful. Anytime I talk to somebody about increasing their fluid intake, the first thing I say is go buy yourself a new cup. Now, I'm not telling you to go buy a Stanley. I don't have Stanley because I'm cheap. That is Simply Modern. It comes off Amazon. They have a million colors. They're my favorite. But find a new cup. That makes a huge difference. You make it attractive. You make it look pretty. And we want that. If you are, you want to have a new system for laundry, go buy a new laundry basket. That's going to make a world of difference. Every year we buy our kids school supplies. Why? We have tons of crayons in the art box, but when it's new and we're trying to create a new fun environment, we're going to buy a new box of crayons because that's fun. We're more likely to use things that feel pretty and positive and all those things. So it can make a really big difference. All right. Okay, so cue is the trigger. We've talked about that several times. Cue is whatever triggers you to take an action, whatever that might be. And then the cue is the prediction of what that's going to do. So also, I want to relax. So that kind of tells me if I do this next step, then I'm going to get to relax. So it's the prediction, the assumption that this action is going to give me X, Y, Z. I actually heard somebody bring that up about snacking the other day, that your cue might be boredom. The cue is usually the clock when it comes to snacking. 3 o'clock, snack time. That's what everybody has. I swear that's from school. I think that is from childhood school time. But you have this cue. Your typical craving is then for a snack of some kind. And we assume that snack is going to give us whatever it is, relaxation, a break, it's going to make us feel good. We assume that. And when we assume that, it kind of takes on a life of its own. So changing the prediction usually changes the habit a little bit, the action part of that. If you've ever heard anybody shift your mindset from the I have to the I get to, that is a shift in that cue, a shift in that prediction. And it can make a really big difference. I mentioned earlier that I have 4 kids and laundry is unreal. Okay. If any of y'all have a bunch of kids, you know this. And sometimes I have to remind myself, I don't have to do the laundry. I get to do the laundry. I have lots of kids and we are blessed to have lots of clothes. So I get to do this for them. And sometimes it works to make me a little happier and sometimes it doesn't, but we try. And if you can shift that mindset, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, so the next piece of this is making it easy. Practice over planning. Repetition leads to habit formation. So how long you do something really isn't what matters as much as how often you do it. If you are starting a walking routine, do not set out to go from not walking anything more than 5 steps a day for the last 20 years to walking 30 minutes every day in the evening. That's not where your habit is going to be created. Your habit is going to be created by for the next 3 days, putting on your shoes and going outside for 5 minutes, walking outside. Maybe you just walk to your mailbox. I don't know how long your driveway is, but maybe that's all you do. You put on your shoes, you walk to your mailbox. The more times you do that, the more habitual that becomes. And guess what? Eventually, you're going to be like, I'm already out here. I'm going to walk around the block. And then you're doing that. And now you're becoming a walker. So I'll share, for instance, myself. I sit at this desk all day and talk to you guys. And for the last 2 months, I have been making it a priority to get up and go for a walk on my lunch break. And so initially it was just, I put my shoes by the door so I could see them. I'm like, oh, I need to go walk. I need to do this. And now for the last probably 3 weeks, consistently, I look forward to my walk in the afternoons at my lunch break. And I just do 1 block around. I could probably get 2 in if I walked really fast during my lunch break, but I'm only at 1 so far. But it's been a process and I look forward to it. But it had to start out very small. And that is exactly where we tend to fall off the wagon, because we have all or nothing mindset. If I can't give 30 minutes, 5 days a week, what's the point? The point is anything is better than nothing. And you can give 5 minutes every day. You may not have 30 minutes to give every day right now, but you have 5 minutes you can give. And when you start seeing yourself do that 5 minutes consistently, that habit, that action is going to grow. And that is the biggest piece. Okay, so this next slide talks about creating friction, creating space. One of the things that I really try to stress is making the behavior you want to stop less accessible, all right? If you have a family that loves to bring all kinds of snacks into the house, and you are a snacker, and you know that if you see the Oreos, you will eat the Oreos. We want to create as much friction between wanting the Oreo and eating the Oreo, all right? So the easiest way to do this is to, let me back up. The easiest way to do this is to create more steps. Okay, so if you're the one who buys the Oreos for your family, you know they're in the house, so I can't hide them from you because you know they're there. But when you open the pantry to get something out to eat and you see the Oreos, that might be a trigger that we're not strong enough to battle yet. So in that case, change it from being in your line of sight. Put it up high, put it down low. Put it somewhere that you're not going to see it immediately. That's not a big difference, right? You might think that's no big deal. How many times have you gone to the grocery store and never been able to find the product you're looking for because it's 2 shelves higher than you thought it was going to be? It happens all the time. If you take that out of your line of sight, you're going to create more space, more friction, and that's going to help diminish your action. It's going to help diminish how often you're actually reaching for those Oreos. And we can do this with lots and lots of things. I always tell people to get a snack basket and put those unhealthy snacks, the things that you don't want to eat, in that snack basket. Do not get a clear box. It needs to be something you can't see in, and put that to the side. You can't see it. That's huge. That makes a world of difference. So really try to focus on that. The 2-minute rule, find a gateway habit and start there. So this is back to breaking your want down into little tiny pieces. So this talks about running a marathon. Breaking that down into your initial goal is for the next 2 weeks, you're simply going to put on your shoes. That's all you're going to do. You're just simply going to put on your running shoes. All right. You might walk around your house in your running shoes. That little tiny thing is going to grow and grow and grow. And before you know it, you're going to have a marathon medal hanging around your neck because you were able to reach your goal. We just have to break it down. All right, make it satisfying. The cardinal rule of behavior change: what is immediately rewarded is repeated. All right, what is immediately punished is avoided. So think about that. If you put something off or you create a new action as your response, but it doesn't give you the reward you're looking for, you're very unlikely to repeat that. And then you fall back to the behavior that you've been doing because you know that does give you the reward. So you really have to it's trial and error with these new responses, these new actions, so that you can find something that gives you the reward, because then you're going to begin to repeat that over and over. All right. So what feels like an immediate reward? The answer is always going to be seeing progress. The more times you see yourself be consistent, the more times you see yourself do something that is not only helping you reach your goal, but making you feel good, that's progress. And that's where you're going to see benefit. Have you ever seen a habit tracker? Being able to check mark off or highlight or whatever that you took that action, that is progress. That is you visually seeing progress. That's why habit trackers exist, because they give you an immediate reward. You get to see your progress growing. Accountability is huge. Have somebody in your life that you share these things with. You have us dietitians that you are meeting with almost monthly for that first full year of your surgery. And that's what we're here for, accountability. Talk through your habit changes that you want to have with us, and we're going to ask you about them next time. If you come to me and you say, like, we talk about fluid increasing, next time we chat, I'm going to be like, hey, how's that new cup going? How are you doing with your fluid? What are you doing differently? What's helped you reach that goal? And if you have to say, I haven't reached my goal, let's talk through that. Why not? What happened? What didn't work for you? Because it is trial and error. It is an experiment that we have to go through. It's part of the process. You're not going to hit it out of the park every time right away. You've got to work through that. All right. So Atomic Habits, one of my favorite books. I really, really encourage you to get it. I do think, I'm almost positive, if you have Spotify, I think he has the book on Spotify that you can listen to the chapters for free. I'm pretty sure it's on there. But definitely reach for that book. Take a look. There's so much amazing information in there. But that wraps everything up for this portion of the support group.